Today I am making a very simple sandalwood spice incense. The ingredients are going to be sandalwood, powdered cinnamon, powdered clove, and instead of using a traditional binder that you would normally use in incense, we are going to actually use ground up marshmallow root from the garden. It acts as a great binder. So I'm going to demonstrate that today. The first thing I want to do is actually get my binder paste ready. So I'm going to take a teaspoon of the marshmallow root. It tends to be a heaping teaspoon. It doesn't necessarily need to be super accurate. It's a heaping teaspoon. I'm going to put it in a bowl, and then I'm going to start off with just a teaspoon of hot water just to get the paste started. So that's what we're going to do first. And you'll see with the hot water, it happens very quickly. Just a teaspoon. Give that a little stir. Get that activated. And you can already see the mucilage that starts. It already starts to thicken up really quickly. All right, so that's honestly, that looks pretty good. I'm just gonna go ahead and start this. I'm gonna let it sit while we put all the other ingredients together. And if we need to add more water, we certainly can. We can always add more. It's hard to obviously remove any liquid. And when you're working with the incense, you don't want it to be super watery. Otherwise, you'll have a really hard time mixing it all together and forming your cones. So we're going to put together the rest of the ingredients. Again, this is a super simple recipe. Super simple. Only has a couple of ingredients. So I'm going to do 5 teaspoons of sandalwood. My sandalwood has gotten a little clumpy, so I'm gonna just try to get some of these clumps out. You don't want a lot of clumps when you're making your incense, otherwise it will get clumpy when you're, and hard to work with when you're trying to form your cones. So you do want it nice and even consistency. So I'm just gonna tap some of those out. I think that's good for right now. We'll mix it all up together when it's done. All right, next is a half a teaspoon of cinnamon and a half a teaspoon of powdered cloves. I powdered this with a a coffee grinder. I took cinnamon sticks and clove buds, I guess they're called. And I'm just gonna dump the whole thing. I don't have that much left. I'm just gonna dump the whole thing in there. Anyway, use a coffee grinder to grind those up. You can also use a mortar and pestle. That will work too. And put that aside. And then honestly, this is it. So I'm gonna, again, try to get some of these clumps out before we add our binder paste in. Teaspoon might work a little better. All right, that looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and add my binder paste in. It does look a little thick. I probably may end up having to add more water. Again, we're gonna stir all this up and then kind of see what we're working with. And it does kind of form like this little jelly-like consistency, and as you just kind of move your powder into the glob of paste, it kind of starts to bind together. Again, yeah, I am gonna have to add some water to this. All right, go ahead and do that. Add a little bit more water. Again, you only want to do a little bit of water at a time. A little bit really does go a long way, and a little bit can kind of throw you over the edge where your consistency is off and you may have to add more of your powdered aromatics or powdered root to get the consistency that you need in order to start working with the dough. This is probably the longest part of the whole process. Even making the cones can go by pretty quickly, but I find that mixing everything together is usually what takes the longest. And this is still looking a little dry, so I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. And you can wear gloves if you want to. I just prefer not to. I like to kind of touch and feel all my ingredients, and I just prefer not to wear gloves. But I have noticed that a lot of incense dough does, stick to your hands. So if that's, not your jam, go ahead and put some gloves on and work with gloves. All right, we're gonna add a little bit more water. And normally what I do, I don't know why I didn't do it for this video. Normally I keep a small shot glass with the hot water ready to go. That way I can just add a little bit at a time and I don't have to keep going back to the sink. Now you can see our dough is starting to take some shape. All right, that is looking good. Sometimes your recipe, what I have noticed anyway, is sometimes your dough can be a little on the dry and crumbly side. Sometimes if it gets a little too wet, it might be a little too sticky. It might stick to your fingers, stick to all your utensils. If it's too dry and crumbly, it might feel hard to form your cones into the shape that you're looking for. And it's just kind of overall hard to work with. I made a really nice pine incense that was kind of like this. It was really dry and crumbly to work with, but I was able to get them all shaped into cones. And then it dried perfectly. It dried beautifully, and they were nice and hard, and they burnt clean. They burnt through. So the overall final product was fine. It was just a little crumbly, a little dry, a little harder to work with, but there we go. We've got our dough. It is a little on the wetter side, so I probably added just a teensy tiny bit too much water, but it'll be okay. It's all right if it's not perfect and you didn't follow the recipe exactly, that's just what's part of the fun is, for me anyway, is I like to try things and experiment, and it's why I write everything down in my garden notes journal, just because I do tend to not follow exact recipes, and sometimes that's part of the fun, but sometimes that's also frustrating. Just keeping it real. All right, so you just want to pinch a little bit off, and I kind of form them into little cones. Again, they're not perfect. They are not going to be what you find at your local metaphysical shop or anything that you're buying online, because they are going to be hand shaped. Quite honestly, they look a little gross. I am not gonna lie, but they're gonna smell wonderful once they're dry, and I'm burning them. Again, not perfect. They are a little on the wetter side. I can certainly add more sandalwood. I can add a little bit more cinnamon to it to get a better, a drier consistency. But I'm just gonna roll with it. They are going to be completely handmade. and I am using them for myself, so I am not as concerned with how they look and the imperfections that are in them. I think that's part of the fun, part of the process. So I just make little shapes, trying to make a cone. Again, they're a little on the wet side. And then I just put them on my little cutting board here that I have. And right now it is December. We have our wood stove going, so they will dry fairly quickly in about, honestly, probably tomorrow. I don't want to say they'll be completely dry all the way through, but they will be dry to the touch. I do usually let them sit for, I don't know, 5 to 7 days to allow them to continue to cure before I burn them. You will notice that as they continue to cure, the scent profile, the smell after you burn them might change and alter as they cure. That one is really not attractive. You can also try rolling them into sticks. You'll want your dough to be much drier than this in order to roll them. These honestly are just turning out into really bad blobs. Oh. But again, that's part of the fun. If I had to do it, I probably should have added a little bit more sandalwood or a little bit more cinnamon to my dough to make it a little drier and a little bit easier to form. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna rinse my fingers off. We're gonna add a little bit more powder in here and I'll show you what it looks like. Cinnamon to this. I'd say a lot of people probably would not share this video on YouTube on their channel, but you know what? I'm going to share it anyway, because creativity is a process. It is not a final destination. It is not an end game. It is not the final product. The final product is a byproduct of the process. And so, you know, how easy it is to get frustrated if something isn't working out as you think it should, or as you might see somebody else creating, you know, something. And so I just really want to encourage you to do it for the process, do it to connect to yourself and nature and your ingredients, and touch and feel everything, and, you know, really working with everything. Don't get hung up on the final product and what it looks like. Don't get hung up on, you know, quote unquote failures or frustrations. Problem solve, work through it, troubleshoot, and keep going. The process is, let the process be the journey. That is the fun part. Okay, enough of that. Let's try this again. Okay, so you can see my dough has a different consistency now. Okay, it's not sticking to my hands as much as the wetter product was. So I'm gonna pinch this off and you can see it rolls in my hand much better. Okay, that's really what you're looking for. Now from there, you can shape your cones. I am not the best cone shaper at all, but that is also a work in process. I am not a full-time incense maker, and nor do I want to be. This is something that I just do for myself as a way to connect to nature and, you know, the herbs that I grow, spices that I grow, the spices that I grind and smell as I'm working with them. You know, sometimes I do make these for gifts. I do love sharing my process and recipes with everyone. So that's what this video is really all about. Okay, so you can see that took on a much nicer shape. And it smells amazing. I wish you guys could smell it. It just smells amazing. It's gonna smell amazing in a couple days when I light the first one. And again, I take notes in my journal, you know, if I'm tweaking recipes. I made, one of my first batches, I wanted to use frankincense and ground it all up by hand with my mortar and pestle, and it smelled amazing. And but after I made them, what I noticed was that all of the resin kind of, it was weird. It's like all the resin kind of sat at the top of my cone, and when I went to go light it, it was basically just like burning, you know, the full piece of resin. It just didn't burn like traditional incense did. It was just melting, and it just was not a good, just wasn't a good formula. So I made notes and tweaked it and just didn't use as much frankincense in the next round. And guess what? The next one turned out great and smelled amazing as it was burning. So this is my last one. It's going to be a little on the bigger side. And there you have it. I've got 9 incense cones. I've got 5 that look really nice and 4 that don't look so great. So hopefully this video was informative. If anything, I just want to encourage you all to continue to work through your process, continue to tweak and grow and change and evolve, and really feel empowered to make some of this yourself, or at least, you know, at least attempt and try. Be sure to check out my website. I will be sharing all of my recipes that I do have and work with. Yeah, and thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.